You're listening to Building Bold Connections, a podcast where we explore the creative ways business leaders have solved professional challenges to gain success and build net worth from their network.
On this week's episode, we are speaking with Ryan Wilson, co-founder and CEO of The Gathering Spot. This is episode 15 of Building Bold Connections.
Welcome to Building Bold Connections. I'm your host, Tyra Bring, and today I'm here with Ryan Wilson, the CEO of The Gathering Spot. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to have you and on the KSU campus with us.
I appreciate the opportunity. This is a homecoming of sorts.
I know. You're from this area, so you should drive around. We've changed a lot around here.
I can see pretty quickly. It's amazing.
Well, one thing I want to just dive in and start talking about is that when you were very young, age 24, you were already thinking about your mission toward creating a world where opportunity is the byproduct of community and collaboration. How did that become your driving force?
Growing up, I was in a lot of different environments where people, right, just coming together made the difference, made the impact, and made whatever I was doing something that, again, I probably didn't appreciate at the time. I grew up in a church that's not too far from this campus, and we talked about everything. We had elected officials coming to the church on a regular basis. We were there both doing creative things, but then also exploring businesses that we wanted to create. And I saw fundamentally that when people came together, that really special things could happen. Moving forward, I went off to school, and I missed the fundamentals of what that experience was. So I decided that I'd build a business where I could do it every single day.
So is that how The Gathering Spot came to be?
More or less. I mean, there are other experiences in there. I was leading a pretty big effort. I went to Georgetown for undergrad.
That's right. And you have a law degree too, don't you?
I do. And TGS was born out of us, and us is me and my business partner, one of my roommates at Georgetown, thinking about, again, an environment that we could build where we could bring all different types of people together. And so that was the summer of 2013 when the adventure and conversation started. Fast forward, now this has been a little, over 10 summers working on TGS. We are now across the country.
So since we're on a campus and you talked about your co-founder being part of your university experience, how important were those connections that you made in college to creating this community?
I think it's one of the things that we don't talk about enough. College is one of the last environments where you have access to it all. There are people coming to you, you have access to space. You're meeting people that are thinking and building different things all the time. Right. Access to thought leaders and your professors. I mean, it's an amazingly rich experience that I found immediately after being out of. All of those things just go away. And even though I was at the same campus, so I went to Georgetown for undergrad and for law school. And my law school experience was fundamentally different. I was only around lawyers. I lost access to the community that really made college a special place. And again, I think it's something that we shouldn't give up on. It's needed to be in environments where you're meeting and continuing to be able to grow with people. That's what happens at my business every day, which is why no 2 days are the same, but it's interesting, right? It's hard for me to describe because the youngest member is 21, the oldest is 91.
That's awesome.
We're talking about a lot of different things when you bring a lot of different types of people together.
So how did you go about creating that community in The Gathering Spot?
In the early days, it's a one-to-one approach. I was going out and just talking to people about it. And I know that sounds simple.
Yeah, that's how a lot of great things start.
It was us having really intentional discussions with people and talking to them about these shared values. What is it like to imagine a place where we could do all of these things in the same under the same roof? And so every gathering spot has three types of space. We have event space where we host a lot of different experiences. We have restaurant and bar space, and then we have workspace. So the core thesis was that people connect through experiences, they connect through dining, and they connect over work. We just talked to folks about it, and fortunately, when the club opened in 2016, there were 128 people. I would never forget that number.
Wow.
That had signed up to start the journey with us.
So how did you go about raising the capital to start the business?
Tough process. And we counted the number of people that said no to us. It was 97 straight people before we got the
You just need a couple to say yes.
You really do. But it was 97 no's in a row. And I built that network. It's important for me to anybody that's raising capital to share. I didn't know 97 people to have conversations with.
Right.
I would ask folks at the end, a lot of times I would know.
Right.
Is there anyone else that you could recommend me to? And they a lot of times would say yes. There's someone else that I'll introduce you to, and you can go and get a no there. But eventually, those no's we got a couple to turn to a yes, and that is when the process started. I mean, we had a moving target. We thought that our first raise was going to be $1 million. $1 million became 2 became 3. And we just continued to keep talking to folks. It's important to have the right partner.
Yes.
Not all capital is the right capital for you. And the other thing that we were learning that, again, sounds fundamental, but I mean, this was my first venture. I had to master being able to explain how we were going to return capital to folks. Again, simple concept, but a thing that I would skip over. I would talk about all the exciting things that we were going to build and how we were going to do it, but I never quite was able to land the plane on exactly how the investor was going to make money. And that's why they're there. Fortunately, we were able to make that pivot, and again, after 97 straight no's, started to get a couple people that said yes.
We're happy for 98, but I think understanding people's whys are really important to that.
And it's both quantitative and qualitative, a person's why, right? So, I mean, the fundamental job of any good investor is to have a return of capital. So they're looking for an opportunity to make some money with the money that they're going to place in the business. But they also, a lot of times, want to be a part of an effort that they care about and that they're passionate about. When you're starting a new venture, they're betting on you as much as they are betting on the business. The business doesn't really exist yet, so they're really betting on if you're the person that can bring this vision to life. And it's important that you connect with the person so that they have that confidence, right? People in that stage for sure are doing business with people and not with an entity. And once we were able to get a better understanding of how to think in a more long-term fashion about relationship building with an investor, that approach has paid dividends. I mean, it's made a world of difference. I mean, we went from that first raise was $3 million. We've raised over $20 million over the course of the business, and similar process throughout. Continuing to have conversations with people, keeping them updated even after they say no, and knowing how to position the opportunity in a way that gives them confidence that they will enjoy the journey, but then also make some money.
Well, and you started off in Atlanta, but now you're in DC and I think also in Los Angeles, and you have connected cities. So how have you really used that to grow, and why did you choose those places?
So Atlanta was easy. I grew up here, and
hometown,
and it's important for me to note. I think Atlanta is one of the more important cities in the country right now. We're not defined by any one thing, right? We have a lot of things happening at the same time. There are big companies here that have been a part of the history and landscape of the city for a long time.
Absolutely.
There are small companies that are starting here. There are a ton of creatives in music and film that really make the community what it is. We've got a network of colleges and universities. So when you add up what's happening here in Atlanta, this was the perfect place for us to start an idea where you're trying to bring different types of people together. Mm-hmm. Looking forward, it's like, well, where else do you go? Well, we lived in DC for a long time. We knew that city and understood that ecosystem. It's different than Atlanta.
Absolutely.
But still shares, I think, a core belief that it's important to build relationships with folks. Third club was LA. And then during the pandemic, we decided that, look, the world's obviously changed a lot, but our community stayed together. One of the things that I'm really proud of at TGS is that we have retained the vast majority of our membership in an industry where members churn at a pretty significant rate.
Right.
Our churn has been very, very low throughout our history. And that gave us the confidence to say, well, if we couldn't gather during the pandemic, is it possible for us to think about, now that the world is a little bit more quote unquote open,
Right.
can we do elements of what we're doing within our clubs in other cities? And so in New York, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, and Charlotte, we started an effort called Connected Cities, where we built community without space, without at least our space, and told those communities that if we could grow together, that we would eventually build spaces. And so I announced recently that we're going to build our 4th gathering spot in Houston.
That's exciting.
And that's in huge part and thanks to that community where several hundred people now have come together as members of TGS, and we're going to build a physical site there. And then the plan is to continue to build them in the other cities where we have people and no space. But lot of good cities out there to continue to grow.
Well, and I think it's amazing that you retained 98% of your membership during the pandemic. I mean, that says that there's something different about the gathering spot. And I'm a marketer, so understanding what is it that you think differentiates you the most from other workspaces that are out there?
Yeah, we never fully, got into the workspace business. I look at every physical aspect of the club as a tool, right? It's not the business. So we have workspace, but we're not a workspace.
Right,
we have
so many other things.
Absolutely. We have restaurant space, but we're not a restaurant. It's an amenity. It's a place of connection. We have event space, but we're not a venue, right? And I think talking about it in that way, it's similar to how folks feel about their college or university setting, even post-grad.
Right.
Years after a person has graduated from Kennesaw, even if they're not able to make it to campus super regularly, it's a part of who they are. It's a part of how they'll talk about
how we identify.
Exactly. My goal with TGS is to get to that place with folks where it's meaningful to them. And if I can have you in an environment and in a community where you've gained value, whether you're there physically every single day or remote most of the time,
right,
that is what helps to keep folks engaged. And it's not easy. It's more art than science, but we have found over time that people, fortunately, are proud of their relationship with us. And as long as we continue to drive experiences that help them connect or learn about something that's happening in the community, they'll stick with us even through really dark days. So, the business is called The Gathering Spot.
right.
We absolutely shouldn't have made it through COVID, almost by definition.
But we found different ways to gather, didn't we?
We figured it out. It's one of the times of the business that I'm most proud of. We went from producing most of our experiences in person,
right,
to a lot of folks having to do it online.
Right, pivot time.
But we pivoted super quickly. And I remember having a meeting with our team on a Thursday, and by that next Monday, we were shooting content. And long before there was any sort of government intervention,
right,
we created our own fund, and we were directing capital to businesses within the community that needed it immediately. And it was a time. It was tough, but looking back on it, I'm really proud of how we stuck together as a community. And fortunately, the business was able to navigate that time because of those relationships.
Well, and it seems like community has always been an important part of your life, and community service. So how would you, somebody who's in college or a recent graduate, how would you suggest that they get involved in community and in community service to help enrich their life?
So the first thing I think that you have to do is to take a step back and look at the things that you're passionate about. What animates you? A lot of times our question at TGS is what animates you outside of the office. So
okay,
what's exciting to you outside of the work that you maybe do every single day? And then you've got to take a further step back and say, well, where does that come from? Why? Is it a childhood experience? Did I read something that really sparked this interest? And then from there, I don't think that you should overthink it. There's always an opportunity for you to be helpful to people.
that is so true.
And if you just start there, how can I help folks, right? What organizations exist? A lot of times I think people run to try to create their own organization.
Right.
Do it if you feel like there's an opportunity in the market. But there are so many great efforts that could use your help.
Truth.
Last thing I'll say on this point is that at the end of the day, and this is a cliche that I think you hear growing up, but it's the truth, at least to me, you get way more out of quote unquote helping than I think you'll ever be able to give to the experience. And so approach it that way. You're going to meet great people. You're going to get a better understanding for your city and what's happening. And that's invaluable, right? And knowing at the end of the day that, look, what folks are going to write about you and say about you is how you made them feel, how you showed up, what you cared about, and ultimately what you were able to have an impact on. Sometimes they'll talk about your job, sometimes. But most of the time, who you were in the community, and again, how you showed up in it,
Right.
Those are the things that matter. So don't overthink it, though. I mean, there's so much opportunity to get involved with folks, and know that it's a two-way street. Again, if you're one of my favorite quotes, and I saw this years ago, but I'm going to fail to remember the full thing. But the essence of the quote was, "If you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound with mine, then let us work together." And I think that if you approach it with, look, we're all in this experience together.
Absolutely.
And to the extent that I can help, that is I think the highest calling for all of us. And you'll look back pretty quickly, I imagine, and we'll say, hey, look, I didn't know that I could do that, but I did, and I'm glad that I did.
I think when we help others, we're really helping ourselves.
Yeah, the concept of altruism for me is a funny one, because I absolutely believe you are getting something in return.
Yes.
And that's okay. It's okay to be honest about the fact that, no, this was something that made me feel good, and just that feeling is a return on an investment. Well,
and obviously collaboration is such an important part of what you do in your life, but also part of the gathering spot. Why do you think collaboration is important to business?
So I think that there's a quantitative and qualitative element to this too. I think what we're seeing quantitatively is that the way that the world is changing, right, requires us to really take another step back and realize that having a strong business in most contexts requires having a table where there are a lot of different perspectives there, and those folks are able to lean on and trust one another in order to be able to communicate to a lot of different types of people, right? We have access to more information than what we've ever had before, which means that people are genuinely interested in different things, and you've got to be in environments where we're talking through how to best serve, again, a lot of different types of people in order to make the business work. The qualitative side of it for me is just, I think, again, going back to the simple idea of feeling good, we do better in environments where we're connected to each other. We're I think, fooling ourselves sometimes these days with this idea that we can handle a lot of these connections purely online. One of the things that makes me the most sad, honestly, every week it feels like this happens. Someone will say, well, we connected on LinkedIn.
But what else?
And I'm glad for that connection, right? I look at LinkedIn as a phenomenal tool to keep in touch.
Right.
But it's the tool, it's not the relationship, right? We're not doing the work of really collaborating or community building
Absolutely.
with one another. We're using that as a resource to stay in contact. And so I think that, again, qualitatively, we do better in environments where folks are, they know that they can lean on the people that are around them, and that there's good ideas that are flowing in both directions.
So I read in a comment on one of your Instagram posts about making intentional connections at the gathering spot. Can you talk about when people are in networking situations, how can they be intentional so that it's not just I connected with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I think the in-person version of that is that people show up and they'll go to a quote-unquote networking event.
Yep.
And they'll bring a stack of business cards, and they'll think that their mission for the day is to just walk around and hand them out as fast as they can. And that's just not the way that business works, right? Again, people do business with people. A lot of times people that they know, people that they've known over a long period of time. So you've got to be specific about who am I trying to connect with? And the thing that I try to do is, before I ask for anything, is there a way for me to be helpful in whatever it is that they're doing? And 9 times out of 10, everyone has something that, whether it's an introduction or an article that you can send or just well wishes, there's something that you can do to be helpful to whatever it is that they're trying to work on. Focusing there rather than on the transaction of we traded cards or we traded connections. Again, I haven't seen a lot of great deals get done in that way.
Right.
But when I talk to people about deals that they were able to accomplish, and what's inspired even about where we're having this conversation is that all around us,
it's amazing.
But more than just the accolades, there are relationships. I bet that if you start to ask, how did you get to any one of these moments? They'll tell a long story about, we met at this point and stayed in touch and then had this experience and had that experience. And then finally, years later, where nobody saw all the other stuff, and they saw our Grammy win, right? But all of those other experiences and the relationship that we built, that led to this moment. So you got to play the long game with folks and know that, again,
absolutely,
you can't just show up and exchange cards and expect for work to be done.
I agree. Intention is just so important when you have those relationships. So I want to know, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or did this come out of maybe a family way of life?
I don't know if I want to be an entrepreneur right now. No, the short answer to your question is no, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur.
But here we are.
Here we are. What a journey. No, I wanted to be an attorney growing up. That's why I went to law school.
I figured, but you know.
And I think that the through line between what I wanted to be and what I'm doing right now, I wanted to be an attorney because it was about being helpful. I thought that I was going to be able to take on the challenging issues of our time and use the law in order to try to change things that I wanted to see happen.
Absolutely.
Fortunately, I can make that same statement now as an entrepreneur. But my advice to anybody that's looking at any career path, but certainly entrepreneurship, is that you have to stay grounded in why you want to do whatever it is that you want to do. Trends are going to come and go. There's going to be a lot of advice from people near and far. But at the end of the day, why do you want to do this? It gets, no matter what path you choose, there are going to be days where I don't think that you are going to want to do it. And that fallback why is always going to be the thing, at least for me, that has helped me get through the journey. So I am an entrepreneur because that's what you call this process what I'm doing. But I don't wake up every single day just wanting to be an entrepreneur. I'm a person that likes to build things and see the things that I think about exist in the world. And that's called entrepreneurship. So I guess that's what I am. But I don't, the title and there's a lot of things said about entrepreneurship these days that I just like, they're just fundamentally not true, right? The ideas that like, you should be an entrepreneur because you don't have to work for anybody.
Right.
Well, I work for several hundred people that are on my team. I work for several thousand people that are members of TGS.
Absolutely.
I have investors. I work for them too. I've got a lot of different stakeholders, right? So the idea that if this was about not having a boss, well, I got a lot of bosses.
Right. People counting on you.
All the time, right? And so don't fall into the trap of believing that that's why you should or shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Like that, those kind of very kind of social media versions
that's not the best reason.
That's not it at all. And I would venture to say, for most potential careers, most of the easy things people are saying about it, that's not often the reality of the day-to-day lived experience in those professions. You've got to find, again, what animates you, what makes you excited. and try to do that in a way that hopefully keeps you gainfully employed and move from there.
So what would you say to somebody who is trying to find their why and having trouble struggling with following through on their vision for their business or for whatever their mission is? What would you suggest for them to try to find that starting point and get moving?
Entrepreneurship specifically to me is about really good sourcing, right? There's not a lot of new ideas out there to me. It's about putting together different concepts that already exist, that are already out there, right? So you've got to consume a lot of information, right, to get to the place of finding what you like. It's if you're in a box and you've got all of the information that you already know and you in that box, well, it's really hard to think outside of it, right?
Right.
You've got to intentionally, and this is the hard part, this is the thing that people don't actually do. It's cool to say, but it doesn't actually happen. You truly have to get out of that box and go and be in environments that are uncomfortable. So what does that look like while you're still in an academic setting? It's taking classes that maybe are not immediately interesting to you. It's going to clubs and other outside of classroom activities that don't naturally speak to you, but it's meeting the people in those rooms and figuring out why they're interested in it. You've got to source different viewpoints, and then eventually you'll be able to put your own perspective together. But it's not going to happen sitting in your room with the same tools that you have in the toolkit right now. You've got to go find some new tools and learn how to use them. And again, much easier said than done.
Right.
But I'm not good at a lot of things. The one thing that I feel like I'm decent at is I'm constantly pulling information. I'm studying every single environment that I go into, and I'm thinking about what I can take from wherever it is that I go for my business. And it's sometimes things that are super, super small, and sometimes things that are transformative, right? But over time, just that process, it gives us a lot of opportunity to figure out new paths. And that ultimately is, at least in the entrepreneurial context, you've got to continue to evolve and move. And that's done through just kind of piecing together all of the different things that are out there.
So as we're kind of coming to the end of our time together, I really want to ask you, how can somebody get beyond that uncomfortableness so they can be a part of community and they can collaborate?
I'm an introvert by nature, so I feel like an expert in this space.
I'm with you.
I'm a person that believes that, at least for me, you've got to jump in the pool, right? And I wish that it was a gradual process for me, but I sign up for the thing that makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
Right? I in high school, I remember doing a drama class. It was the furthest thing from my interests, but like I signed up for it, and once that happened, at least my personality type, I had to see it through, right? So
Gotcha.
Put yourself forcibly in situations where you've got to see it through. Sign up for that event that isn't for you and go to it, and promise yourself that you're going to leave with 10 meaningful conversations. You've got to force action. It isn't going to happen by just hoping that, by osmosis. Like you've got to go and
be active.
You've got to be active and go do it. And very last thing here is that remember, again, going back to your why, that thing comes from somewhere, and you've got to honor that. You've got to know that that is something that is with you for a reason. And the barriers, sometimes talking to people or going to the event or whatever it is, that can't be more important than you accomplishing the thing that you want to accomplish. So I try to stay more focused on my goal than what I'm scared of. And that's how I've gotten through a lot of situations that aren't naturally for me.
Well, I'm just glad that you have created community and collaboration space and bring that to others. So thank you for being here on Building Bold Connections.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Building Bold Connections. This has been a Coles College and Joel A. Katz Music and Entertainment Business Program production.